Hi everyone. So today I'm gonna be doing a class 2 composite restoration on the 3/6 using my technique, and the instruments that I will be using are the mirror, tweezer, probe. I'm gonna be using the Chinese hat, the new Ladmore burnisher, the interproximal carver, and marginal trimmers, and the carving knife. I'm going to be using these new strips, harmonized composite, some floss, the blue ring for now, the palodent sectional matrices, um, the composite gun, some gauze, cotton rolls, um, and as for the burrs, these are the new finishing and polishing burrs we have so far. Okay, so I'm gonna begin by building up my distal ridge using my sectional palodent matrix band. And I'm gonna place the matrix in a way that's gonna adapt to the box. And then I'm gonna place my wedge. It should be going in with some resistance, but not too tight and not too loose. Something like this. And then I'm gonna place my ring. Make sure it's adapted. Sometimes it doesn't adapt right away, so you have to push it down. So the first thing I'm gonna look at this stage is the box, and I want to see no space here, which means that the matrix is adapted to the tooth surface, and sometimes you get the gingiva stuck in between, so you have to make sure that there's no space. The second thing I am going to look at is the contact between the matrix band and the adjacent tooth. There is a contact here, so I am good. Sometimes the matrix band doesn't bend properly, so I could use a ball burnisher and just gently, you can just gently give it a little push here. Some people don't like to do this, but it's a preference. Just to make sure the contact is 100% without disrupting the matrix surface. Once you're sure that your matrix is adapted well, you can start with loading up the gun for the composite. I always make sure that there's no debris or anything that could cause contamination of the project, and to make sure that the instruments are all clean as well. To build my distal ridge, I like to start with dispensing a fair amount into the box. I fill it up until I get to the tooth surface. And then I'm going to use my Ladmore burnisher to give it some light condensation. the pressure and condensation is not too much, not too little, because I want the composite to fill the whole box, but a lot of condensation can also cause the composite to come out of the box on the lower surface. So once I feel like it's completely filling the box, I am gonna do this motion where I'm gonna push my composite towards the matrix with my condenser, just like this. And this is gonna give me the ridge, curved ridge shape. And it's overfilled. I'm pushing with my condenser, and I'm also curving, going with the curve of the ridge, giving it a little curve. It's not a straight line. And I'm also moving it down up, just to make sure that it's smooth. Once I have the thickness that I want with the ridge, I am going to proceed, and you can see it's a little higher than the tooth, which is what I want because I want that excess. I also don't want a very thick marginal ridge. Now I'm gonna use my interproximal carver to cut the excess and make my ridge on kind of almost the same level as the adjacent. So I use the adjacent tooth as a reference for me to know where I'm gonna cut my composite. It's gonna be somewhere here. So to cut my excess, I am gonna do several punches in my composite. So I'm gonna go like this. And I'm gonna scrape that excess off without touching the ridge. Then I'm gonna look at it from different angles and see where I have excess. I can always remove that excess easily at this stage. And sometimes you have to repeat this step a couple times just to get the exact height and thickness of the ridge, because the composite always flows down. So I have to always reshape it. Do the same motion again with my condenser. Make sure it's covering the margins, and I'm gonna cut it again. take any excess off. And the ridge is kind of sloping down on the lower 6. So I am going to give it a little notch in the middle to give it a slopey shape. And for the excess on the corners, I'm gonna use my tip of the Explorer to get that. And the best way to get that excess is to angle your Explorer with the direction of the tooth, not too straight and not too vertical, not too horizontal, somewhere in like a 45-degree angle. And I try to get to that point of excess and I push towards the matrix to get it off. Without affecting the shape of my new ridge. Take off my excess. I'm pushing on the matrix, not on the tooth, not on the composite. Just with the tip of my Explorer. There's always excess on buccal and lingual corners. Once I like the contour that I have with the ridge and I removed most of my excess, this is the height that I want, this is the thickness that I want, and I removed most of my excess for now. Make sure I check the tooth surfaces, buccal and lingual, no excess. I'll give it a final push. Very light tapping, very light. I'm gonna check one last time if I have excess. Okay, and it's ready for the light cure. I can increase my light now to see better, and I will remove my ring to see how my ridge looks. I'll take off my wedge and my matrix. I like to slide it upwards. I away from the tooth. And now I can examine my ridge from all sides. This is occlusally. This is from the lingual. And from the side, you can see the ridge height. It's very close to the adjacent tooth. It's okay if it's a little higher, but it's not okay if it's lower. Because with finishing, I can always lower it down. But if it's too low, then that's gonna cause an issue, and it's gonna affect my my contact. So I check my ridge height with my probe. I slide it. It's a little bit high, but it's still good, which is what I want. I always check my contact at this point in case I have any major issues. I can always break off this piece of composite and do it again. And I check if I have any voids, major problems like voids in my box. Everything looks good. My box is filled very well. This is how my tooth looks so far. And I'm gonna try to zoom in on the tooth itself. I have some excess, which is okay. I can show how I'm gonna remove that. But this is my ridge shape. It's curved, it's thin, it's merged with my tooth surface. There's no deficiency. I tried to remove as much excess when I was building up my ridge from this area with my Explorer, from this area as well. And my contact is correctly placed here. It's more buccal. And now I can make the second ridge. I'm okay to proceed with my second ridge. I'm not gonna do any removal of the excess right now. From here and the box, I'm not gonna do anything because it's very risky. You don't have any retention, and you might accidentally, as you are removing the excess, you might take off the whole piece. So you're just wasting your time. I wouldn't touch it now. I'm gonna place a second matrix to build my mesial ridge. Same matrix, Paladin sectional matrix. And I'm gonna place it also adapting to the tooth, and it's between the gum tissue and the tooth, making sure that this area is sealed 100%. You don't have any gaps. Yeah. So I want to make sure I don't have any gaps here. Everything is sealed. It's adapted properly. And now I can place my wedge. For the distal, I used the blue one, and for the mesial, I'm gonna try out the yellow one, which is a little smaller than the blue. And we'll see if it's tight or adapting. I'm holding my matrix. Sometimes it slips from the other side. Use my tweezers to push it in place. It's the right size, and it wasn't too tight and it wasn't too loose. I'm ready now for the ring placement. Give it a little nudge. Sometimes it's not fitting all the way down. And now I'm gonna use my ball burnisher just to make sure that it's adapted 100%. I'm not changing the shape of my matrix, I'm just making sure it's adapted. Everything is in place. I have a contact with my mesial. And now I can start putting in the composite. So I'm gonna move it this way. Maybe it's better to see. I'm gonna zoom out a little bit. Yeah. So the same technique with as the distal box. I'm gonna overfill a little bit from inside the box until the top. And I'm gonna use my Ladmore burnisher again to condense. Also not too forcefully and not too little. I don't want to get any voids in my box, but I also don't want a lot of excess in my embrasure area. Condensing it all the way. Okay, so I have kind of like a flat surface. I'm condensing just in a one dimension vertically, and I'm gonna have a lot of excess, but that's okay, I can cut it off. I will show you exactly, maybe this is clearer now, more clear than the first ridge. I'm gonna push my composite in a pushing motion towards my matrix to get my ridge. I am just pushing towards my matrix, nothing else. And I'm giving it a little curve in the middle, make it look more of a ridge. It's overfilled, which is what I want. When I like the thickness that I want, this is when I can start with cutting the excess, and I'm using my interproximal carver. And a lot of people, when they want to remove the excess, they swipe to remove, but that's gonna move your composite as well. It's gonna move your ridge. The best way is to just make notches in your composite. Make cuts. So I'm just cutting the excess at the level that I want my ridge to be. Make several cuts in one line. My reference is my tooth surface, buccally and lingually. I'm just cutting, making those cuts again. Sometimes you have to go over them again to get that excess piece off. And then I push that excess upwards and away from my ridge, and I take it away. This way you are not moving your ridge while you remove your excess. I can go ahead now and adapt my ridge in a brushing, very gentle brushing motion, just to make it smooth. Again, the ridge height should be similar to the adjacent tooth, so I am gonna estimate it around here. I'm gently tapping. I'm making sure that lingually and buccally the composite is adapted to the tooth so that I don't get any deficiencies in this area. And I look at it occlusally to see if I have any excess. You can remove your excess with the carver itself, or you can use the Explorer. Sometimes I have to use the other end of my carver to get some delicate areas. And sometimes you have to give it a little push to make sure it is not falling down. Two major areas that get a lot of excess, buccally and lingually, at the junction of the composite and the tooth. So I always tap on these areas and do the same motion of cutting my excess. Instead of swiping it off, I'm cutting it so I don't disrupt the shape of my ridge. Buccally, I don't have any excess. I'm gonna go over the corners with my tip of my Explorer just to get rid of any excess, because once it's hardened, it's very difficult. Making sure my contour is good as well and the shape that I want. This is the height that I want, and this is the shape that I want. Everything I do with composite has to be very, very gentle because it moves very easily. If it moves a little bit, I can just push it back in place and then do the same motion again. Remove any excess. Make sure my contour is the shape and dimension that I want. I'm just tapping on my tooth to make sure that I removed as much excess as I can. There is still a little bit of excess on my lingual cusp. I can just take it off with my probe, with my Explorer, sorry. And I always remove my composite towards the tooth, not towards the composite. So from composite to tooth on the margin. This is the shape that I want, the level that I want, and I'm ready to cure it. So this is the ridge that I just built, and this is from lingual. I have a contact on my mesial. I have a contact on my distal. My margin is blending with my tooth, lingually and buccally on all sides. I check my box to see if I have any voids. My box is filled up properly. I have some excess, but that's okay for now. This is my buccal view. This is my occlusal view. This is my lingual view. At this stage, I check my contact a lot to see, in case I don't have a contact on any side, I can always break it at this point and do it again. But once you build your class 1, it's very difficult to fix a contact issue. My ridge is a little high on the mesial, but I can also, as I mentioned before, I can decrease it with my finishing burrs later. Now I can put some composite in the class 1, put the composite all one shot, and I am going to overfill it. I usually stop when I feel like my cavity is completely filled. And I'm going to use my Labmore burnisher again to condense and I don't really care about the pressure of my condensation as much as the first steps, because this is a class 1 cavity and nothing will come out that I won't see. So I'm going to try to make it all one flat surface so I can build my morphology. At this point, my focus is to make sure that I adapt my composite to my tooth on all these margins and seal them, because I don't want any deficiencies or voids in these areas before I build my morphology. So I'm tilting my burnisher, and I'm gonna go for each cusp and just tap. I'm just tapping on the, lightly tapping on the margin areas, just to make sure that it is completely filled up. Just tapping, and I'm gonna do the same thing on my lingual with my condenser, just to make sure My margin is going to be sealed. Okay, I'm ready now to build my morphology, and the way I do it is by going with the lingual surface first, and then I go to my buccal surface. I'm gonna start by drawing on the tooth with my interproximal carver, the same one I was using. I'm gonna locate the main morphology that I want, which is the fossa, the two fossa, the central groove, two buccal grooves, and one lingual groove. I'm gonna draw with the tip of my carver. I'm gonna draw the central groove, just a line to locate it, where it's gonna be, where my buccal will be, where my lingual will be. And I'm just lightly tapping on my composite, small taps. I'm not going deep, just small taps to get a line. That line is gonna help me, I'm gonna use that line as a reference for my carving, and I'm just tapping up and down, just drawing. I'm gonna do the same thing for my lingual groove, just to locate it. And it's usually, I follow from the outside of the tooth surface, and I just follow it. There's kind of like a concavity in the middle. Follow that, and it's gonna lead me to where my lingual groove is gonna be. My central groove, I located it based on the adjacent teeth. So this is the central groove on the premolar, central groove on the 7, and it should be on the same line as them. Same. This is this. I should be going the same line. This is my lingual, and I'm just lightly tapping just so I can get a view of where I'm gonna be moving my carver. I'm gonna do the same thing on my buccal. I have two buccal grooves, and they are located the same way I did my lingual. There's a line here and a line here that I'm gonna follow, and it's gonna lead me to where my future groove will be. Same thing here. I'm not carving yet. I'm just locating my morphology. With time, that gets easier, and you can see it faster, you can do it faster. This is how my morphology is gonna look like. This is my dimensions. And now I can start with carving. You can start buccally or lingually, it's a preference. I prefer lingual, so I'm gonna start there. My first move is with my same carver, tip of the carver. I'm gonna locate my fossa, and I'm gonna tilt my carver with the level and direction of my cusp to create that triangular fossa. And I'm just gonna tap in the middle, right below my central groove. So this is my reference, and I'm not gonna touch my buccal at all at this point. I'm just working on my lingual. I'm just tapping to create the fossa depth, tapping and sliding a little bit, tapping, sliding, tapping, sliding. And I'm gonna do the same motion with each cusp. So I'm gonna reach my central groove, I'm gonna focus on my mesiolingual cusp first. I am just reaching to the central groove that I drew, and I'm stopping there. My tip stops there, and I am tapping on my composite, just gently tapping. And when I reach the tooth area, with the margin between the tooth and the composite, I'm giving it a little sliding motion, and I'm going to repeat that with every cusp. The sliding motion is for me to make sure that my composite is adapted on the margin and that I'm not going to get any voids. So I'm going to tap, tap, and my reference for the level of my composite is the cusp, tooth cusp, and the adjacent cusp as well. I don't want to get a very deep morphology. I'm not gonna go like this. This is gonna give me deep morphology. I'm not gonna go too shallow as well because I don't want it to be too shallow. I am gonna follow my cusp inclination and my adjacent cusp inclination as a reference as well. So I can always put my instrument on the adjacent tooth to see how much inclination I need. And I can transfer that back to my tooth just so I know that I'm not going too deep and I'm not going too shallow. So I'm gonna go a little bit faster now, and I'm gonna deepen in the area of the fossa. I go a little bit deep, more inclined, just to get that little deeper notch. Same thing for my the distolingual cusp. I am not going beyond my central groove at all. I am not removing any excess right now. I am just adapting, tapping and sliding, tapping and sliding. The tip of my carver is not exceeding the central groove that I drew initially because I am not touching the buccal cusps yet. I can always go with the tip of my carver and reline that central groove. If it moved a little bit, that's okay. I can always reline it. I'm gonna go a little bit deeper on my distal fossa just to create that notch. Once I'm sure that I adapted the composite very well, I like the cusp and the depth of my morphology on the lingual, the cusp build, and there is no voids. I'm gonna reline my lingual groove. Now I'm gonna remove the excess. The way that I do it is I look at the tooth surface. I'm gonna try to zoom in. Let's try to see if I can get it with this camera. This is my tooth so far. I have a lot of excess because I pushed all my composite towards my tooth. I want to remove it with the tip of my carver. I am gonna go just above the margin and flick it off, cut it and take it off towards my tooth. I am safe to be on my tooth surface because it's not gonna disrupt my composite, but I will be very careful when I come close to my composite. So I'm just using the tip of my carver vertically, and I'm just scraping off any excess composite that I can see visually. I'm not going over my margin. I'm going right above my margin on my tooth surface. There's supplemental grooves on these teeth, and they always have excess composite on them. So that's my focus as well, to remove that. It's mostly removed. I am gonna readapt my composite with the same motion, just a little bit tapping on the margin area in case I caused any kind of deficiency by mistake. That way I am gonna make sure that it is sealed. And once you practice this for some time, you'll be able to do all the motions at one time. So tapping, removing excess, shaping, it will get easier. I'm gonna decrease my light before my composite gets hard. I'm just moving my carver the direction of the cusp. Make sure that I do not have any excess. Just adapting with tapping motion on my composite. I'm not gonna go up and down. I'm not gonna go left and right. I just keep my instrument touching composite and the tooth surface at the same time so that I don't get a scratchy surface. I'm relining my lingual. I'm removing my excess. Okay. This is the level of the cusp that I want. My lingual is almost done. I can now go to my buckle. Same thing. Maybe it's gonna be clearer like this. I am gonna be tapping with the direction, with the angle of my instrument's gonna be with the same direction and angle of the adjacent teeth. And this will be my reference, so I'm gonna angle it this way. I am just gonna tap and swipe up towards my tooth. Tap, and also keeping my central groove as a reference because I don't wanna ruin the lingual that I just built. I follow one cusp at a time, and then I swipe up to seal my margin. And when I'm sure that each cusp is good, sometimes the central groove can move because of your carving. So I can just adapt it to the where it was with just some light tapping with the tip of my carver. I'm gonna go a little bit deeper with my angle. Instead of this, I'm gonna go like this for my fossa area, and I'm gonna swipe up to get that increased shape, increased depth on that area. I'm gonna tap and swipe up. Gonna go a little faster on my buckle so the composite doesn't harden. Same thing. And I angle my carver however the surface of the tooth. So I'm going on this surface, it's right like this. Same angle, but different direction. I'm going like this, I go like this. If I'm going here, I go like this. Because each cusp has two surfaces. You have one like this and this, so you have to accommodate. It's not just a flat surface. I'm tapping and pushing up my composite. My reference for the buckle is the central groove. I'm not gonna go past it. And I'm scraping off the excess from the tooth surface, not from the composite or the margin. Any visible excess, I can just scrape it off. And this is the angle for my fossa. I'm just relining my central groove and adapting my composite. I'm just tapping again on each cusp and swiping upwards, so I can get the right depth of my morphology. Each cusp has two surfaces, so I am doing it one by one. It's a repetitive process, but that's how you get a smooth surface. So the same motion I repeated with tapping on my composite to get a smooth surface. You have to get a smooth surface, you have to very gently swipe on, wipe your composite on each cusp, but very gently, so you don't move it because it's still not cured. Very, very slow, light tapping on each cusp, so I can get rid of any scratches that I made while I was carving. I am just smoothing, very feather light touch on each cusp, one at a time. I also inspect for any excess that I didn't see before. I am redefining my grooves that I might have disrupted while carving. Very light motion on my cusp to make it smooth, and removing any excess on my tooth. There's none. I'm gonna do the same thing on my lingual. Very, very light sliding motion on my cusp. I don't want to move it, but I just want to get rid of my scratches. And I also remove any excess as well that I might have not seen before. I'm redefining my lingual groove, and I'm smoothing my cusp. Very light touch, just to get a smooth surface. It's gonna help my morphology and composite. to look nicer. No excess on my tooth. I'm not touching the margin, just the tooth. Scraping motion with the tip of my carver. And last step here in building my morphology is to just slightly going over my grooves in case I accidentally pushed it while carving, to bring it back. And I am ready. Before actually, you can also use your Chinese hat to define your fossa. I already did it with my carver, but you can also put in your Chinese hat in that area you want to make the fossa, and you can just carve a little, or you can just make that indentation with it in the middle, in the beginning, when you're drawing your morphology. And I'm ready to cure it. So this is how it looks without any finishing or polishing yet. I haven't done anything but cured it so far. And you can see maybe morphology from different angles. Still has some roughness, and I'm gonna check out the excess and do it right now. First thing I do is check with my Explorer if I have any catch on the margin. Excess is okay, but I just want to check if I have any catch, like a void, any deficiency that I would need to fix. If everything is okay, then I can proceed with doing my boxes. The mesial and distal still have excess in them that I did not remove yet. So for my distal box, you can see the excess here. This is all excess on the box, and I'm gonna take it off with my carving knife. I'm going to engage it with my tooth and then move it away from the tooth. And it's shaped in a way to accommodate the curve of the tooth. So it looks like this, and my excess is gone. I'm just engaging it in the excess and moving away from the tooth at an angle. I keep doing it until I am sure that I have a smooth surface going from my tooth to my composite. So no more excess and no more catch. on my box. I'm gonna repeat the same thing on all my boxes, buccally and lingually. I'm gonna do one buccally for you so you can see. So I'll do the mesial one, buccally. Same thing, I am going to engage in tooth excess and push away from my tooth, away from my composite. Until I feel like there is no more excess there, it's one smooth surface. I know that I have removed the excess. There's also excess in the box from below, which is here, and I can also remove that with a knife. I just engage in the excess and I go away from my tooth, away. So I can have a smooth box all around. You will hear a crack sound and scratchy sound. It is better now. And I'm gonna try to check it with my explorer tip to check if I have any more excess on my there is no catch anymore. This is how I finish my boxes, and I'm gonna repeat the same thing for all the mesial, both mesial, distal box, lingual, and buccal. You can see that the mesial buccal contour and finish here. I did the surface here for the box, and I did this surface here for the box. I'm gonna do this one and this one later, and I am going to start finishing my occlusal surface. I'm gonna be using the new pointy tip, the new finishing burr, this one. I want to use something pointy because I want to also smoothen the grooves. So I will start and I also smoothen one cusp at a time. Same thing for the lingual. I go cusp by cusp and I reach the groove area because I don't want to get any debris or scratches in there. I'm also gonna go over the fossas, smoothen that too. And the ridges. Okay, so for finishing and polishing, after removing the excess from the boxes, making sure that they are smooth and in line and the contour is good, I'm gonna fix the contour a little bit with these new discs. And I just place them in the embrasure area, and I try to stay away from the contact. Just a little bit, if there's a little over contour, you can fix that. Same thing on the other side. Buckling and rolling. My contour is pretty good. You can use whatever disc, coarse or fine or whatever you're comfortable with. Sometimes I also use this green disc to smoothen things out. It's this one, and I also use it for the margin. So this is my motion upwards. And I use it gently because I don't want to take too much off. I also have a smooth margin, so I don't want to ruin it with too much polish, finishing and polishing. You can also use it in the brazier areas to smoothen out, or the enameloplasty. If you need to, you can use this. My mesial ridge is a little higher than it should be, so I can always lower it down. So this is my initial finished look. I want to double check if I have any excess on the margin. I realized I have a little bit of excess here. My probe is stopping, my Explorer. So I'm gonna try to flick it off because it looks small. And if I can't, I will use my marginal trimmer, and I'm gonna clip it off in this way. So if I tilt the tooth, maybe you can see, yeah. It's right here. You hear that clip? I just clipped it off with my marginal trimmer. It was right at the margin. It was very small, so it came off. There is another excess that is here, and I'm gonna try to clip that off as well. Okay. And I'm gonna sometimes if you remove your excess from the box, but your margin is still the box is still a little bulky, you can, and it's not coming off with the knife, you can still um, smoothen it out with a finishing strip. If it's too thick, you can cut it to make it as thin or thick as you want. And I can insert the strip inside my embrasure, and I can strip off any excess or fix the box contour. Sometimes if I have excess and it's not coming off as well, you can thin it down and then flick it off on the margin of the box. And the same thing on the mesial box. If you have any issues in the contour, if it's too bulky, or and if you cause any damage to the tooth, you can also fix it with some enameloplasty. Really good polishing helps too. I'm gonna fix this point. So this is the final look of my composite. I checked all my margins with my Explorer, and I made sure that everything is good and sealed. There's no excess, and I made sure that my boxes are good and my contour. I have a good contact with my adjacent, and I will check it again with a floss. That's good. I'm gonna check the mesial. That's good too. I can also check the bite. Then articulating paper. I have a point, 2 points on the lingual that I should remove. So I'm just gonna do a bit more finishing with my green cup. And I'm gonna try to remove or actually deepen that morphology a little bit on that area. So this is almost my finished tooth. I'm gonna use this wheel for finishing, just to give it a little polish. This is the view of my composite from distal, from mesial. This is the buccal, lingual, and occlusal view. Nothing is catching. I have a very smooth surface, smooth finish, and good margin, good adaptation. And thank you for watching.